Welcome, one and all, throughout time and space, for this episode of Weebs on the Weekends, the podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look on an anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode will cover the anime news highlights for the fourth week of February 2022. We will also give our thoughts on whether to resurrect or rebury the 2012 anime franchise Hirro no Kakera, or otherwise known as the Tamori Princess Saga. My name is Sam Martinez. I'm a part-time weeb, full-time automail mechanic, and with me as always is my co-host Jay Johnson, who is a part-time weeb, but a full-time English language sensei. Now, Jay, I have to say, we've talked a little bit earlier, and you mentioned that you haven't had the chance to play Minecraft as much as you wanted, and I would have to say, I'm in a somewhat similar boat because I just recently purchased the Spider-Man Miles Morales game, and I have been wanting to play it, and I played a little bit of it, but oh my goodness, it draws me back in. I want to play it so much more, and I have to say the hype is real. Now I think about it, have you had a chance to play any of the Spider-Man games?
It's weird. Yeah, it's weird you say that because I've kind of been in this space of thinking about getting another gaming console just because of what game just came or game I'm interested in. Oh, Elden Ring. Elden Ring is just released.
It just dropped. Yeah,
just dropped within the past 24 hours. But yeah, I was watching gameplay of it, the first gameplay footage of it during school. It premiered on my Friday, so I was watching it during my in between breaks, and I was like, oh wow, I need this in my life because I played Sekiro and I played Demon Souls. So it's from Software, which is the company that makes all the Dark Souls and Demon Souls games. And I was like, oh, this was a concept written by George R. Martin?
George R. Martin?
Yeah, George R. Martin originally set up, and then it came about. This was teased back in 2018, 2019, with just the name Elden Ring. And it's just weird of a thing to come out, same vein of Cyberpunk 2077, the vibe of waiting so long for this game that we don't really know anything about. But
no, Jay, explain to me, because you said that you've played Sekiro and you've also played Dark Souls. What is it about those games that draw people in? Because I've tried to play Nioh, and I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before. I've tried to play it, and I didn't realize it was made by the same people, and the fact that it was. I'm sure it pales in comparisons to its predecessors, but it was just so hard for me trying, and I was still within, I guess, my first world, quote unquote, or my first area or mini sandbox that I'm in. You start out in this building and you're supposed to work your way out, and you get penalized for dying. You get half as much experience as you can get, and what is it about that sort of game mechanic where it's just incredibly hard that brings people back to it?
There's some beautiful written video essays on Dark Souls, and it's littering YouTube and other publishing websites that you can go to. But for me, it's something that always hits home when I read it, probably a couple of years ago, probably half a decade ago now. But it's Dark Souls is basically banging your head against a brick wall, waiting for it to dislodge a brick, and the satisfaction you get when that brick finally dislodges.
when that brick chips off.
And it's just odd that that's so close to what most Dark Soul players or From Software players vibe with so hard, because no matter how hard you hit your head against that brick, eventually it's going to get worn down. And it's a feeling of accomplishment that's not many people can really experience fully because they have a threshold, but there are some gamers that do get enjoyment from that. And I think I'm one of them. But with the Minecraft comparison, why I've stopped playing is that one of the bugs fixed. I was exploiting a bug in the game, and it got fixed recently with the update.
Oh, you were using hacks? That's what was going on?
No. It was just a bug that hasn't been fixed for a long time, and they finally fixed it. And it kind of ruined the game for me, I guess, because my whole world or my whole operating system of how I deal with the Minecraft world relied on that exploit. And I was like, you know what? Never mind. I'll just wrap it up. So it's weird that you can get into like the vibe of playing a certain way, and then when that way doesn't work out anymore, you just switch a game. So I was thinking about just no longer playing my Nintendo Switch, getting onto this Elden Ring bandwagon. But yeah, I'm excited for it. But how about you, Sam? What's up with your gaming life?
So, like I said, I've just been mainly. I have been trying to finish playing. Nuts. The name is escaping me, and the Ghost of Tsushima. I was playing through the Ghost of Tsushima mainly because I can't remember. I think we were talking off air, and we were talking about Star Wars Visions, and I think it was around the same time that the Book of Boba Fett was coming out. So it was just this very hyper old school Japanese type feel, and I was also listening to another podcast called The Samurai Archives, and they were talking about Ghost of Tsushima, and the thing is, the guy that was making the podcast, this is kind of like a knock to him, but also a bit of a nod because he had somebody on the podcast that was an actual Japanese historian who knew a lot about the culture during the time period of Ghost of Tsushima, but the podcaster did not play the game and because he was just a Microsoft only type guy, and it just made me mad. It's like, how the hell are you going to have a podcast on a video game and you didn't play the video game? You know, it's like, so like I sort of rage played Ghost of Tsushima for a little bit, and also because I had just finished watching Hidden Fortress too, so I was in that scene, and for some reason, I guess because of what was going on with like Spider-Man No Way Home, things like that, like I finally just broke down and bought Miles Morales because I was trying to save on getting Miles Morales because I heard that it was glorious on the PS5 and I wanted to have that as my first PS5 game. But with what's been going on with the waits for PS5s and whether or not, like their limited availability, things of that nature, so I figured since I still have my PlayStation 4, let me just go ahead and just enjoy it. And it's really good. It's interesting, like how different it is, just because like they really take music cues from the Spider Verse, and how that sort of added a new layer to the Spider-Man mythos. And as I said, I've just been enjoying it there. And I think it's also kind of good to talk about the video games that we did, especially because of the anime that we have for today, which is Hero no Kakera. No, yeah, I have already mentioned it. It's I think it's based off an Otome game. Am I correct in that, Jay, or no?
Yeah, Otome just meaning maiden, but yeah, it's based off a visual novel that we've been exposed to before, so I'm actually excited to talk about it. But are you ready to get into news? Because there's actually some video game news as well.
Exactly. That was that was intentional. But I would want to save the video game closer to the end so that we can have a better transition. And what I can do to transition us into the news is a little bit of lights. I guess like mainly the visuals. It reminds me of Cyberpunk, so that's a bit of a segue if we want to go there. So, but real quick, time codes, description, screen box. There we go. Now we're here to talk about the news, and I want to say this was something that you and had sort of predicted a little bit, or I don't know if it was wishful thinking or it was manifesting it. But this bit of news, we've learned that the group known as DMM Pictures, along with the studio Troika, the studio who made Outdoor Zero, along with recreators, they have made an official website to promote an anime original work that they are collaborating with each other for, and the work is entitled Shinobi no Itoki. and it was teased that it will be premiering later on this year of Anime 2022. And as I said earlier, the visual, it has a very futuristic cyberpunk type feel to it, and we see this female figure in this sort of, I guess you would say, a not necessarily Metal Gear setup, but more akin to like a Ghost in the Shell uh, sort of futuristic ninja type uniform. And Jay, with this new bit of news, how are you feeling about more studios doing more anime original works?
It does seem to be a trend. I mean, there's always been like original works. It's like not something new to the industry, but it does seem like a lot of studios are like attempting, a little bit more freedom nowadays because this is Studio Troika, and they only have been around for not even a decade yet. I think they were established back in 2013, but like you said, they did a Noah Zero, which is like one of the most standout mechas of the decade, and then they're also responsible for Recreators. They'll also be responsible for Idolish 7, which is a very highly rated boys idol anime, which I haven't gotten a chance to check out, but it has so much merchandise and profitability behind it. I'm not surprised if that's what's allowing them to do this property. And it does seem that the title Shinobi no Itoki translates to like time of the shinobu, or time of the ninja, I guess. So it does make sense if it's going to be like a futuristic time period where ninjas come back and they like resurface, maybe something akin to like Ninja Gaiden. And I'm kind of excited for it, especially with its release date in this year. So with how studios market their properties, it looks to be like probably in the terms of 6 months from now when it's going to be released, probably in the fall. So we'll probably get a couple of things like the PV pretty soon. We'll get the cast announcement pretty soon, and then a full trailer probably pretty soon as well. So they're going to have to get moving because the studio again is very young. They're not really known for much. I mean, they did tackle one of the Fate Fate series installments, I think, with one of the El Malloy series. Not familiar. We will have a guest that could have talked about it more, but I guess we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it seems to be interesting that the studio is at least taking this risk right now because they're pretty young. So hopefully more
Oh yeah.
studios do take this under advisement for the future.
As you said, anime originals is not something new, but it seems like we are seeing more of it. Like, for instance, Akodama Drive, which was an anime original, and that was very done very well. And I've enjoyed Troika's Recreators very much so. So I am very interested to see what their own original stories, what will come of it. And talking about original stories, we shall be transitioning to our next bit of news where we have learned that a manga that Hayao Miyazaki had made, or I guess it's considered more of a graphic novel, at least from what the article says, that he made about 40 years ago, known as Shuna no Tabi, or The Journey of Shuna. It's finally getting its English translation released here in the States. And the people who will be handling it is the publishing company known as First Second Books, and the translations will be done by Alex Ducoc de Witt. And essentially, this story is following this prince known as Shuna, who leaves his village to search for something that's known as golden seeds to help his village from starving. And along the way, he runs into characters known as godmen, and as well as enslaved girls on his journey. And it's just very interesting to me that the visual for this graphic novel is very, very reminiscent of Princess Mononoke. And it's just very interesting to me because it's kind of interesting that like it never really dawned on me that with all the amount of works that Miyazaki has done, that he would have sat down and written out a manga and or a graphic novel in his time as well. But Jay, what are your thoughts on this?
If you've seen any documentaries on Miyazaki, sorry, I have to say Hayao Miyazaki because his son is becoming not as famous, but he's becoming at least prevalent in the industry. So Hayao Miyazaki, but yeah, Hayao Miyazaki has published about softballing around 15 graphic novels and manga series. And it's
Okay.
interesting about Suna's journey because it is a kind of a concept. He wrote Nausicaa of the Valley and Suna's journey at the same time. And it's weird that one of them took off and the other one didn't. But yeah, like you said, Sam, is that does feel very reminiscent of Princess Mononoke because the two characters have like giant elks that they ride, and there is this like sense of going to this distant land to save a people. So you can kind of wrap that in because Miyazaki has this love for other cultures' folk stories. So it does make sense that it bleeds over into like other works, and especially this one because it is a watercolor graphic novel, and there was like 140 pages of it, and it makes sense that it did take this long to kind of get around to its English translation because like what works of Hayao Miyazaki do you pick? Because he's a prevalent anime film director, but he's also done a lot of novel writing as well as graphic novel writing. Same thing like with some short films. So like there's a whole if you go to Japan and go to like his museum, like you see a lot of these smaller works that he's done and like, his famous documentaries about himself and autobiographies. So I'm not surprised that this is coming up, especially since he's coming back for his film next year. I think it's called How Do You Live?
Yep.
Yeah, How Do You Live? And it does make sense that again to build up the hype of Hayao Miyazaki coming back finally, hopefully for the last time, because I hate when he goes on break and says, "Oh, I'm not going to come back," and then he comes back. He's not Quentin Tarantino who says, "I'm going to do 10 films and I'm done." He's like quit and come back, quit and come back several times in the past. But hopefully, this is a trend that more of his graphic novels get either adaptations, gets translated, or get turned to film. So I'm looking forward that this is an upward trend for him.
Oh, same here. And I am very interested about the film that he's coming in to work on. And according to the article, he is about half, or at least the animation is, for the film is about halfway finished. So, as you said, I think it is anticipated that we should see this movie sometime next year. So it's definitely going to be interesting because I know like we've seen his peers, or I don't know if they would even be considered his peers, but at least like the people in the same group who've done Bell. I can't remember his name, but at least like the other people that are well known in the industry, like they've done newer movies as well, and then to see him to come back, I feel as though it's a bit of a resurgence in anime films, so to speak. And talking about resurgence, we for our next bit of news, we have seen that the series "Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon," also known by the fans as Danmachi, they have released a season 4 teaser trailer in which the series will have its fourth season, or its fourth big arc, known as the Labyrinth arc, to be coming back later on this year of 2022. Now, Jay, I I don't know if I actually talked to you about Don Machi, so I really don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Um, yeah, it's Danmachi kind of exists in this place. Same thing with like a couple other shonen properties, like World Trigger comes to mind. Is that
Hmm.
they are good series, but they're so not mid, but they're so like beloved, but didn't attract mainline attention. Is that it can make a profit off of marketing and it's based off of like solid material, and the fans are rabid about it. but it has been like sneaking past like the shonen scene for so many years because the first Danmachi came out in 2015,
Hmm.
and like there's like 37 episodes for them from the previous seasons, and then a couple of OVAs, and it's based off a light novel. So again, like all these things are working for it, but like it's like one of those things of like who cares kind of thing. Unfortunately, because again, it's a solid series, and I haven't seen the first season, second or third. I've only seen the abridged version, and that's kind of again what's stuck in my head. And I've always vibe with abridged versions for how they understand the story and can manipulate it in a way to make it a little bit more enjoyable. Because it's done by Studio JC staff, who does all the bottom tier shonen series.
Oh
So
my.
it kind of hurts that
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't get as much love as it does because again, I think a lot of these shonen series that are, passing by with I guess a minimum attention aren't really getting their spot in the limelight because of like the bigger names because like again they was outshadowed by like Black Clover and My Hero Academia and all these other things, even though it has an interesting takes on the Greek pantheon and like the relationship between heroes and the magic system of that world. Again, I can go into it by virtue of knowing the Brit series, but I don't know what's actually true. But yeah, Bell for like a an antagonist, or I'm sorry, protagonist of the series,
Protagonist.
and
Yeah.
his best girl Hestia kind of like threw a lot of people off because they saw Hestia's character design and kind of wrote it off. So I'm actually interested to see if this is going to be the final season and if people have gotten tired of Danmachi or just how people are going to receive it in 2022. But Sam, since you've watched some of it or all of it, what do you think?
I agree with you in the sense that like it definitely has lulls, and the first few seasons it was overshadowed by other shonens, and uh, for a fairly good reason, because the premise of the show is essentially his goddess gives him a power to where he can level up at a exponential rate until he gets his I'm trying to think exactly what the details are. It's like until he is recognized by the woman that he loves, something like that. Because in the beginning he wanted to be strong enough so that he can be recognized as a peer with somebody that he's infatuated with. After the first season, I think it's like the second season, like it sort of shifts away from that. He starts to build up the familia, which, as you had mentioned, is sort of like a guild that each deity has for like within this world, and he starts building up his deities familia, and they start to really address some of the issues in that world. So, like for instance, they have their own quote unquote entertainment district arc where they deal with prostitution, and it's kind of interesting because of Japan's view on prostitution. And it's sort of different from like what the shows a view on prostitution is, and it's kind of interesting seeing how they try to meld that together. And not only that, but after that season, they focus on sort of the dynamics between heroes and monsters, and they sort of flip that on its head, and they start to have sort of like an existential questioning. It's like whether or not them heroing and killing these monsters for gold, whether or not it's really good, that sort of thing. And so, like this fourth season is sort of bringing it back to its origin, where they're going back into the labyrinth and they're starting to travel again. And it's would be interesting to see them move forward after going through the emotional growth that had led them up to this point. So I'm interested to see where the story is going to go, and whether or not like this is going to help embellish on the story, because we only know a little bit about the family, or at least like how families work, or why the deities uh make familia to begin with, and so like to have a season where it sort of focuses on that relationship, I think it may build on it a little bit more. So, like you said before, it's a bit of a slow start. So we'll see if season 4 really does uh, any does the series any good. And now we'll go on to second to last bit of news, the penultimate news, where we're talking about Fire Force, and Fire Force has finally come to a close, and they had mentioned that and Fire Force had ran for a total of 304 chapters. For this final week, it has been giving multiple covers for the magazine that cover color pages, and there also have been news of some more things coming out that they will be doing to celebrate the franchise, celebrate its ending. And Jay, do you have any thoughts on Fire Force coming to a close?
I've seen a couple of the final pages of the series, and I haven't delved into the manga at all. I've loved the first 2 seasons. Again, it's something done by David Productions, which you have to love for their sound design purely. And I've talked high praise about them before in the past, so I'll skip over that now. But it does vibe with the same ending. At least I've seen what I've seen of it, with the same ending of Soul Eater, which again is another ending, a manga series that I love. So can't wait to dive into Fire Force, especially with these mangas that are basically just 300 volumes. Because again, that is the same case with Demon Slayer, which I think mangakas of this era that have grown up with like Oda as the champion of the art form that he is, that you can't just keep doing decades manga. And again, it's something that's changed with the industry, is that these mangakas know a little bit better about how to promote themselves and how to take care of themselves. So I'm glad that Fire Force has ended, maybe because of waning population or that the mangaka did reach the end of the story. But I think this is a new story that is more revealing of other things or other significance than itself. Because if you look at the past year, sorry, this past year and the previous year before, there have been a lot of major shonen titles that have just ended, that I think the industry didn't know that this was going to be a thing. And again, I think they don't know how to adapt to it, because in 2020, Demon Slayer ended, Haikyuu ended, Haikyuu, Promised Neverland ended, Beastars ended this year, and Hell's Paradise, which is getting an anime adaptation later this year, ended as well. And then there's also the mangas, seriously moneymaker mangas right now are in their final arcs, like My Hero Academia, Tokyo Revengers, Dr. Stone, Kaguya-sama's Love is War, and even Jujutsu Kaisen is coming to an end probably in the next 2 years. So I think the news that Fire Force ended is like significant, but it's more significant when you consider that it's probably one of the last beacons to show people that, oh yeah, mangas that have been going on for like half a decade are going to end at the same time. There's just going to be this giant vacuum. So we've talked a little bit about Kaiju number 9 is probably coming up. The Spy X Family is getting adaptation, has also been doing well. But other than that, it seems to be this blank canvas of what the manga anime scene is going to be in the next few years. So hopefully I'm wrong, that there's going to be something that's rise up in the void or in the absence. Like One Piece might come to an end pretty potentially soon. Bleach is coming back. But yeah, I'm sad that Fire Force is ending, but I'm definitely going to get the mangas now.
No, I hear what you're saying, and as you said, like it's sort of like a changing of the guard. I know, for instance, when it's kind of odd because it's reminiscent of like when Bleach, Naruto, and One Piece came out, because it seems like they came out just as Dragon Ball Z was waning over here in the West. So it's like they were able to sort of carry on the banner of anime, so to speak. And now that like a lot of them have gone, and we've seen My Hero sort of come up and pick up its banner, and Jujutsu Kaisen only within the last few years sort of doing the same thing. But like as they're going as quickly as they came, it's kind of hard to see, like you said, who the next banner supporters will be. But I guess it's also exciting too because it gives newer creators a chance to step into the spotlight and to show their stuff. But along with that, we shall be going to our final bit of news, which is the fact that Near Automata, which is a game, will be heading to Japanese screens with its own anime adaptation. Jay, I'm not very familiar with the series, but I have seen this name pop up several times before. Are you familiar with this video game franchise?
Not at all, because I'm aware of it like by virtue of like osmosis with the
Mhm.
gaming industry. But yeah, Nier Automata is a really beloved series. It kind of falls into the vein of those philosophical walkabouts, but it has like the combat system to make it a thrilling and action driven combat oriented series as well. But like the main character's name is B2 or 2B, sorry. Yeah, the main character's name is 2B. And it does have this goth aesthetic vibe that vibes with like the same uh, Kingdom Hearts kind of aesthetic of Organization 13. That's kind of how I place that in my head. But yeah, it's a weird property maybe to adapt into an anime because I mean we just saw Arcane and haven't really given any determinative facts about if Arcane is anime or not yet because I haven't watched it. But again,
Oh, I believe it's Arcane in my heart. I believe it's anime in my heart. I've seen Arcane and I love it.
okay, good. So yeah, so right now there's not much to this news story because
Mhm.
I went to the official websites and there's no listed anime studio. Like the only thing that we have is like a promotional something of something, just showing that
Yeah.
2B is like in like pencil sketch form right now. But yeah, the only thing I can predict about this is probably is going to be done by Studio Square Enix because they have a
Hmm.
very dedicated animation studio, even though they've only done two original animes, which is the Dragon Quest anime from 2019, as well as Kingsglaive, which is from the Final Fantasy 15 series. But it's weird because Square Enix has their fingers in so many other anime that it's weird that maybe this is like their first original take on things, but all the
Mhm.
other anime they have their fingers in like range from like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood to most recently Case Study of Vanitas. So they definitely have the credits to do more anime. So this is probably their dipping a toe into the anime scene to see if they're going to do what Netflix has been doing, what whoever did Arcane did. But yeah, they do have a lot of video game properties, so this might actually lead to like a Kingdom Hearts anime potentially.
Oh, you sure that's not a bit of a reach? I mean, because I'm just looking over the different. I was just looking at the Wikipedia for Nier Automata. It seems like there's other spin-off games and that have multiple endings that they can definitely delve into if they wanted to animate. If this does pick up, but I can kind of see them like wanting to go Kingdom Hearts, but I feel as though I think it's been mentioned before. It seems like Square Enix is one of those studios that does video games, but just wants to do movies, and it's just like or TV shows. It's like why don't you just do it? It's like you have like the knowledge, the know-how, and you have the resources to do it. But I mean, their video games have been very fun and very have been not stigmatizing, but they have been staples and groundbreaking in their respective genres. And looking back at this, because it seems like it was released on the PlayStation 4 and it came out in 2017, and with it being as popular as it has been, it makes me want to go back and play the game because, as you said, like it seems to have like that sort of cyberpunk high meta feel to it. But as you said, like all they do is talk about the gameplay. So I'm thinking like it's going to be it's good for a reason, and people like it for that. that was the news, and we will be going on to the anime at hand, which is also a video game, and we will be talking about whether or not this game needed its anime, whether or not it should be beloved, and its anime is known as Hirro no Kakera, the Tamori Princess Saga. And again, time codes, descriptions. And now, Jay, I think this is another pick of yours. So why don't you give us a brief synopsis and how you came across choosing this anime?
It's an odd thing that we're coming to this anime again, which, again, because we have covered Hakuki in our first season of the podcast back in 2010. And oddly enough, I don't know if I did this on purpose or subconsciously, but this is also another visual, based off another visual novel by Idea Factory, which is the same people responsible for Hakuki. And also, Hakuki was done by the same studio that did this. So, shared the same studio, the gaming producer, as well as the animation studio. So, it's done by Studio Dean, who's responsible for a wide range of anime that if you show someone that's anime, or if you show someone that doesn't want anime, that the studios that you usually go to are Studio Dean and Studio CJ staff, because those are the most palatable, non-offensive animes out there. They do the anime aesthetic very well. They don't have a unique flair to their studio. They just get good animators to do clean jobs and clean works and animations, but nothing too extraordinary. But Studio Dean is also responsible for Konosuba, and they're responsible for Log Horizon. They're responsible for most recently the Sorceress Stabber Orphan. So like again, they have such a wide range of anime that you forget that they've done something like this series, and it's 13 episodes. It's available on High Dive. It premiered back in April 1st, 2012. So that's all the information tidbits out the way. And then the story is centered on a teenage girl foretold to become a shrine priestess in charge of sealing or keeping sealed a demonic sword alongside 5 guardians in charge of her protection. And that's the lowdown of the background information, because there's a lot to talk about here, because if you look at well, for one, I can't say the full title's name. I know the translated English title, which is the Scarlet Fragments, and then everything you said about the Tamayori is the subtitle of it, because there's a second season. It's based off of a visual game novel that was for the PlayStation 2, so it's of that time as well. And it definitely feels like that. Where I want to start with this is that this made me appreciate Haikuki so much more that I would actually go rewatch it now, because it is something really not off-putting with Ultimate games, again, that they take this video game that has multiple roots. Same thing with like the Fate series, with we talked about The World Only God Knows. But they do take a stance where why you play a visual novel is that you pursue the romantic interests of the character you want to pursue. But in the anime, they just rock hard, set you into a path that follows what I'm putting my notes as the first contact rule. It's like whatever boy she meets first is the one she's destined to be with, which is such a weird way to take a root game, because again, like most video games, like even like what you said with Nier Automata, is that adapting a video game story into a long-term or even mini-series is such a hard thing. You really have to get people that know what they're doing, and to this point, even up until 2022, it hasn't really been done well. And even when we go back to 2012, it's not good is like a nice way to say it. But we are revisiting this, hopefully to never revisit again, because I think this is something that's just keyed into the genre, as in horror movies scare you, comedies make you laugh, that these Ultimate games these romantic simulators are inscribed in their DNA to be terrible
Yeah.
because of the main character has to be an insert for whoever's viewing the anime. And that's not exclusive to this genre. Like, it happens all out through power fantasies. Like, you're supposed to see yourself in the protagonist's shoes because, like, oh, I could do that, or I could do that if I was in that situation. This series does everything else wrong as well because you get introduced to these her harem. Don't like to use reverse harem because that's doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah,
a
it's just a
harem
harem.
for
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, it's a harem for girls and harem for boys. But whatever. But yeah, this harem is like made up of like the four base personality types. It's the stoic one, the cheerful one, the tsunade or the tsundere one, which is
Mhm.
easily to anger, and then there's the kind one, usually like an older senpai, older classmate kind of role. And there's a fifth one now with this, which is weird. So I don't know why they added an extra dude in, but an extra dude. I don't even know what his type is. He's just like, oh, he's the younger character. So he's like the Genki childhood character without being the childhood friend
Oh,
character.
the little brother without
Yeah,
being the
little
little
brother
brother.
character. Yeah. So no matter how you split this, like to set up the story with somewhat of a solid premise is that she's coming to this small town. Her grandmother was in charge of the shrine, and now she's a unwilling participant, discovering that, oh, I have a foretold destiny that I need to protect this sword that is bad news if people get
A
a hold of
foretold
it.
destiny was never told to her.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, she's
Yeah.
unknowing of her destiny. She's also unwilling because she just stumbled into it. She was like, "Hey, surprise, you're a shrine priestess." But then on top of that, her character is a blank slate, so she doesn't have any agency in that choice either. She can't just be like, "You know what, grandma? No, I'm just going to leave the town and not do this." Like, yes, you're entitled to like protecting the lives of humanity or whatever, but it's like also a thing of giving the character a choice to do that.
Mhm.
And the choice of doing that is robbed from her. And it's so, again, giving the watcher no place to start. I can ramble on about what I didn't like about this series, but it's so weird because of we had a episode called, or we covered a series called Star Driver, which
Mhm.
was essentially the same premise of protecting a site from evildoers. So we get introduced to the Logos in the third episode. There's the villainous organization trying to unseal the sword by destroying the sealing crest or sites artifacts. And the five boys are supposed to protect it with some kind of sense of magical abilities, but their magical abilities aren't really good. There's a guy that left to go training, and they're all stronger together, like the Power Rangers, I guess. So
Yes.
it's a weird mixture of like story beats that we have seen before that we've talked about on the podcast that we've actually liked, and but then it does this to a lesser degree in the most uninteresting way possible. But Sam,
Mm.
I'm assuming you didn't like it either. But can you pick out like one key feature that bugged you the most, maybe?
So, I hated that it was an ultimate game. I didn't. So, one thing I wanted to clarify because you akined it to I'm sorry. What was the name of the previous ultimate game that we did? Hokoki. Yeah, yeah,
Hokoki,
Hokoki.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so you made it seem as though like it's in the same series. So like, is it just like an anthology type thing, just like made by the same people, or is this supposed to be like a similar, like within that same universe, like same storyline type thing?
Oh yeah, so Idea Factory, they make
Yeah.
visual novels, so it's just another property they have done.
Okay, okay, okay. I didn't know if it was like Garden of Sinners and Fate series type setup, or like you said, it was just made by the same people. All right, so it's funny that you said that you had preferred Hakoki to this because I am in a different camp where I prefer this to Hakoki mainly because the story is more linear this go around, and I guess that's because like they have like you said, like they have a focus on a specific route, whereas in the other one it's like in Hakoki it's sort of like they're bouncing around between every possible love interest, so you don't really have like that linear type story. And I guess like with this one, like because they focus more on a singular route, you like the story is more understandable. But my huge complaint is that it's sort of like a stop go. I akin it mainly to whenever I'm reading like a Stephen King work, just like how the pacing is. Like you start up at a cold stop, and then like once you start going and you start getting into the rhythm, then you're at another cold stop and you have to start up again. And the only reason that the story has that stop go is because the main the princess that I like to call her, Tamaki, she likes to intervene. Is like, this story isn't about you. Let me find out what's going on with the Power Rangers and with the demon sword thing, right? It's like, as you said, like she has to sort of like assert herself, or at least she has to be blank so that uh the viewer or the player can assert themselves into the story. But then, as the story's getting good, she has to do something to stop the story completely dead cold. I mean, like for instance, in the third episode, where we have the antagonistic force trying to break down the barriers in opening up the seal, things were getting good. It's like we're seeing the baddies, we're starting to see like some conflict, we're seeing the boys actually having to do their guard duties. And then she comes onto the scene. It's like, no, stop. And literally the bad guy's like, hey guys, we need a dip. And they leave, literally because she says no. And it's very frustrating because, as I said, it's like we're getting, to like a little bit more of like the world building stuff. It's like, why do they want to destroy the world with this demon sword? Who are they? Like, why do I care? It's like we're starting to get into that. And then we have uh the main character basically stop the story because of reasons, I guess. But essentially, like, I like how, again, like, I much prefer how they choose a specific route, whether or not it's the route that they should have chosen, because, like you said, it's just like the first contact thing. And this guy is obviously a jerk, and she shouldn't like him. But I guess because he can get that emotional reaction out of her, she starts to have a dopamine trip on that and wants to go after him even more. But still, it's just a bit annoying that they're trying to work in like the romantic aspects of that. And I'm just thinking to myself, is like, I much rather be watching a work that does root games a lot better, either being Steins Gate or being Fate. But like I said, it was just very interesting to me that you much prefer Hakoki to this. And could you remind me again why you prefer Hakoki to Tomoya Princess Tamori?
I think it's additional to like the genre when you add it into the historic aspect of it. Because again,
Mm-hmm.
like just as foreigners or those that are unfamiliar with Japanese history in an intimate way, like seeing all the events played out and that you get the sense of being educated. And that's what kind of drove me for Hakuki, because it is like a self insert. Yeah, so I wrote this as well because it made me laugh. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
all when it's like historic like that, it's basically a fan fiction or a self insert, or I'm going to introduce my own OC into it, and that just made
Yeah.
me like rethink about Haikuki through that lens. Is that yes, you want to experience history through the character that you create, and they're not going to add or change anything, but you are experiencing it through that character's eyes. So you feel like as a viewer, you feel like you're included in this story a little bit more intimately than what I experienced here in this series, because you're watching
Mm-hmm.
a unlikable character, or not unlikable, but a blank character. Is really nothing to her, very much not anything really to the other characters as well, because again, the main harem of this is like broken down between like those personality types, but then add on top of that their hair color, which bruh, I was not sure about who was who for most of the time. So like they have varying heights, and like of course their personality
Yeah.
bleeds into how they speak, but their hair colors are so dull and muted. Like there's like characters that have, so all their hair colors are dark, which I was like, that's so
Now that you
jarring.
mention, it's funny because you mentioned that the guy that I like to call a sleeper cell, the Yuichi, the guy who can sleep at any time, right? His hair color is white, and like you just made me realize that like he actually has a white hair color, but like in the grand scheme of everything, like he doesn't stand out, which is so weird. How like they're gonna dull down like a white haired colored character that never happened.
Right, and it's not just because it's not standoutish, but it's also because it's like a dark white. It's like not
Yeah.
gray, but it's not silver either. So the other hair colors, the main character or the main boy, whatever, is like dark red. It's not like scarlet red like the title would.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe scarlet is dark
Clarify.
red, but it's like bloody red. It's like really dark red. And then there's like dark purple, there's light purple, and there's dark green. And I was like, and I like keyed into that
Wait,
immediately.
there's a dark green. Who was the dark green? Was that the guy with the glasses or no?
Yeah, guy with the glasses. Yeah. So yeah, tall dude with glasses. Yeah. And it's so weird because I keyed into that immediately because I was like, oh, which best boy am I supposed to root for? Because it's a root game, of course. But it's
Yeah.
like they're so indistinguishable. I mean, there's a short guy and they all have their personalities, like I said, but it's not in the same way as Hakuki, who they all had their like signature look because they're based off of historic characters.
Yeah.
And then even in the series, for when they go into their magical, they don't do like a magical girl transformation, but whenever they activate their powers, their like powers aren't that too like dissimilar
They're
to
not
their
very
hair color. So
flashy.
like when they
Yeah.
activate their seals or their abilities, it's like we don't get any sense of what they're capable of yet. We get a sense of they're stronger together. That's why the turmoil of when the fifth guardian Shinji shows up in the third episode. It's like, why did you leave? We're weaker without you. And he's like, well, I didn't think I could grow here in the village. And it's like that's the most character development you get from any of the characters. Like, oh, I wanted to do my job properly, but I wasn't able to do it here with you guys. So
Yeah.
again, you get the 5 Power Rangers back in episode 3, and then besides that, it's like you said. I mean, I'm just trying to vibe off of what you said because of
Mm-hmm.
the idea of what the Lagos, that's the villainous organization, presents in the third episode. And bruh, their character designs are cool. They're definitely a
I wanted more
standout.
screen time of them, and like you said, like not only that, but like their names are different, right? It's like 1 through 4 in German, and like their personalities are very distinct, along with the uniqueness of their character design. And it's just like, give me more of these guys. I don't want like this bland boy band of Power Rangers. It's like I want Eins, Y, Dry, and I forgot what number 4 is. But I want these guys. I want them. And it's weird because you're not supposed to really root for the bad guy, but I guess like when the good guys aren't all that good, like who else are you supposed to root for, right?
Right, because yeah, like you said, like the antagonist, like it does the 3 episode test well, I guess. So the first episode, there's like the establishment of the characters and the world, and it's like, oh, now we have a goal. We have like the personalities established. In the second episode, there's like a side romp of finding like a kitsune or a wolf, or sorry, fox. Kitsune means fox, and then they explain a little bit more about like the history behind the ceilings and like what she has to do to grow her power. Which again, she is powerless from this most of the 3 episodes. Like she activates her powers like 2 times. Like when she first enters the town, she's instructed by main boy about how to incant and protection around herself, but it's like that's it. And then at the very end, like she shows up to like join the boys fighting, but it's not really explained that if you listen in the second episode about why the priestess needs her 5 guardians, is that their powers amplify So when you get to the third episode, you kind of forget that's the reason why the Lagos just runs away.
Yeah.
Because like
Oh, okay.
she's an amplifier for their abilities. But again, that's not a good character role for your main, your protagonist, that she just
Yeah,
amplifies, she
she's
just
just
assists
support.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a support character. And it's like that doesn't endear you to her character at all. And it's just like a misplaced role for a main heroine or hero for the series. So it's like, again, it's like they did everything wrong. And I hate to bag on a series, because why bag on a series and review it? And I always think there's
Mhm.
like a silver lining to a show. But I just solely didn't enjoy this in any slightest way. Like, the best thing about the show was the opening with the OP, because it had some good music. But
I would say that was very interesting. I was gonna say that like it seemed as though like the opening was a lot more emotional than what the anime deserved. It like when you listen to the opening, it makes you think that if you just watch it off the opening, right? It makes you feel as though that the story is a lot deeper than what it actually is going to be. Like you feel as though there's going to be like emotional strife, turmoil, and actual conflict that is to come. But the characters don't really carry the I'm trying to think. It doesn't really carry like those ideals or those feelings that you get from the intro. I it's funny that you talked about support characters because it made me think about Josuke from JoJo Part 4, and in the sense that in that work, or in that section of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, that was the first time that a JoJo was a support character. But when you watch the show, he doesn't feel like a support character. He feels like he has. I think the main difference between him and the prom princess, I'm sorry, Tamaki, is that sense of agency, right? Whereas with Josuke, even though he doesn't play as big as a role as his friends do, like he has this sense of he makes decisions for his own person so that he can support these people, and he is active in his own story. Whereas with Tamaki, she is very, very passive, and I guess the thing that makes it more um, frustrating is that the passivity seems ingenuous when she has these, when she has comments such as, it's like all this, me just being a princess, it's too much to take in. It's like you say that, but you're acting a different way. It's like you don't really seem somebody who really is all that upset that all of a sudden you're now a princess. And even though you don't have any information about your situation, you don't actively pursue it, right? The only time that we see her actively pursue this information is her first day in class, when she runs into that glasses chick who's also a transfer student, right? So she's trying to learn, try to gain friends, and she reaches out to her. It's like, hey, do you know about this Tamari princess stuff, right? And then she's immediately hurried away by Takuma, the redhead guy. Then immediately hurried away by him, and he's like, "Yo, you can't talk about these things because people are trying to get your power." And she's like, "Yo, I don't even know what my power is. I'm just trying to get information, right? Any way that I can." But like aside from that, we don't see her being active in her journey, and I guess like that's what's most infuriating about that, you know?
yeah, so it seems like, again, maybe just a problem in the writing room or the writing process of
Mm-hmm.
this, and maybe just a mistranslation from the visual novel, which again can happen, and again probably is the main point of why the series seems so plotted out for no reason. Because even for the 3 episode test, introducing the villains in the third episode is kind of bog standard and what you expect from the 3 episode test, in which we've
Mm-hmm.
kind of seen a lot this season as well. but for how slow the first two episodes are, it's definitely needed to introduce the villains a lot earlier and even do a little bit diving into the magical system, because like right now there's no real rules to what they can do. There's no real demonstration of what their power extent is or how like working together really works. So again, like after 3 episodes, you really don't have anything to cling on to from a character standpoint, from a narrative standpoint, from even plotting forward to what these 12 episodes can be, because there is a second season, again, following the kind of game pathway of the same thing with Hakuki having a second season. But based on everything of what I just said in like the most negative light I've ever been with the anime, I'm going to say if we're going to give this a final decision of resurrect or be buried, I'm going to bury it.
I am right there with you. This deserves a rebury.
All right. Easy claps on this anime, but can you remind me of the name again, Sam?
The name for this anime is Hirro no Kakera, the Tamori Princess Saga, and it has gotten a resounding rebury from both Jay and myself.
Yeah, I mean, there's better examples, because like it's not even in the same class of Ouran Host Club, which is always the go-to staple of this kind of romantic slice of life genre, because it's not really Ouran Host Club isn't really otome, but it is the kind of slice of life that this kind of falls into because it's in a school setting. So there is comedy, there is action, there is drama, I guess, but it's like so lightly sprinkled in there to it that you can't really give it any solid genre tag to that. So I'm just going to say it's an otome game. But yeah, that was our 10-year discussion on this. We are a little bit early on the 10 years since it's premiered on April Fool's Day back in 2012. But yeah, that was an interesting revisit to, or not, we didn't even revisit it, but a visiting for the first time this. And just to note that this is episode 75, which is interesting of a anime to end on episode 75, but we're halfway through your term as host, Sam, so I wanted to let you know that you have another 25 weeks before you have to hand it over back to
me. Oh my goodness. I would have to say, like, I've gotten used to the rings of being the host, but you know, I think that with that being said, the audience would definitely be would definitely enjoy having you back soon. But they got to stick around with me for just a little bit, just a little bit longer. And so, like you said, that was the results for our 75th episode. And the next episode that we will be coming back to you will be when we review the 2012 movie Berserk, the Golden Age Arc, Part 1, Egg of the King. And it's kind of interesting that we're still within the fantasy genre with these last couple weeks, because this is going to be in the darker side of fantasy that we will be visiting for our next episode.
Yeah, it's really exciting because, again, surprise, surprise, we have another guest coming back, or not another guest, but an old guest coming back for what, a third time, I think now. So pretty happy to have him back.
Yes.
Yeah, to cover Berserk, because Berserk for 2012 came out in 3 parts for the Golden Age arc. So I'm very excited to hear our guest thoughts about that and actually visit Berserk for the first time. But that will be the end of our winter season, and then we'll come back in about a month's time to cover anime from, or the following season of 2012, which will be covering like animes like Excel World, Koro no Basket, Space Brothers, and even the first season of Kingdom came out in 2012, which I'm very excited about because it's been a highly competitive manga series with One Piece for like a decade now, and no one really talks about Kingdom at all. So I'm really excited to talk about it for the first time.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so definitely be able to give some of the more understated anime its due, or understated works. Not necessarily understated. What's the word?
Overlooked.
Underdog. Yeah, overlooked. And I am definitely excited because, like you said, some of the works that we're going to be going into, some of them the more popular ones I haven't seen before, and some of them I have, and it's just going to be great, grand fun. Now, Jay, aside from that, what do you have for us today?
All right, to close up, I want to share at least a 5-star review of this anime because I felt or I didn't feel like I gave it enough due credits for what it was able to do. So this is a review by Orchid Knight, who said, "One of my top 5 animes of all time. One of the few reverse harem series, so I love it. If you're a fan of Kami-sama Kiss, Oran Host Club, or Fruit Baskets, you will love 2. It's more dramatic than the others listed, but sometimes I like to take a break from the comedy. Uwu face at the very end."